The metal was still warm when his hands found it, twisted and sharp, cutting into his palms as he pulled. Inside the crushed sedan, a kid was screaming, blood streaming from a gash above his eye, and Marcus Webb didn't think, didn't hesitate, just ripped at the door with everything he had. The frame groaned, gave an inch, then another. Rain hammered his back, cold and relentless, mixing with the smoke pouring from the engine. He could smell gasoline. The kid's eyes locked on his, wide with terror, and Marcus thought of his own son, thought of every nightmare that had ever jerked him awake at 3 a.m. "I got you," he said, his voice raw. "I got you, kid." And then the door gave way, and he reached in, grabbed the boy under the arms, and hauled him out onto the wet asphalt just as the first flames licked up from under the hood. But when he laid the kid down, and the boy looked up at him, really looked at him, Marcus felt his heart stop. Because he knew that face. God help him, he knew that face. 6 months earlier, Marcus had been a different man. Not better, not worse, just different. He'd worked the night shift at the auto plant for 19 years, came home smelling like grease and metal shavings, and fell asleep watching whatever game was on. His wife, Linda, had left 7 years back, couldn't handle the drinking, couldn't handle the silence that had grown between them like a wall he didn't know how to tear down. Their son, Ethan, was 15 then, all elbows and attitude, and Marcus loved him with a fierceness that scared him sometimes. Loved him so much he didn't know how to say it, so he didn't. He'd just ruffle the kid's hair when he walked by, slip him $20 for pizza, make sure he got to school on time. That was love, wasn't it? Showing up, being there. But Marcus had a secret, one that sat in his chest like a stone. He'd been there the night Danny Brennan died. Danny, his best friend since 3rd grade, the guy who'd stood up at his wedding, who'd been there the day Ethan was born. They'd been driving back from a job site, just the two of them, and Marcus had been tired, so damn tired. But Danny had been drunker, slurring his words, barely able to stand. So Marcus had taken the keys, had gotten behind the wheel, even though his own eyes were heavy, even though he'd had a few beers himself. And then he'd swerved to avoid a deer, overcorrected, and the truck had rolled. Danny had died on impact. Marcus had walked away with a concussion and a guilt that never faded. The police ruled it an accident, no charges. But Danny's brother, Kyle Brennan, didn't see it that way. Kyle had shown up at the funeral, his face stone, and hadn't said a word to Marcus, hadn't even looked at him. And Marcus understood. He understood perfectly. If it had been Ethan in that truck, if someone had walked away while his boy died, Marcus wouldn't have forgiven them either. So he carried it, the weight of it, and he drank a little more, slept a little less, and tried to be a better father to Ethan, because that was all he had left to be good at. The night of the accident, Marcus had been driving home from his shift, the rain so heavy he could barely see the road. His windshield wipers beat a rhythm that matched his exhaustion, and he was thinking about Ethan's birthday next week, wondering if the kid would even want to spend it with him. That's when he saw the car, a gray sedan, swerving across the center line, headlights cutting wild arcs through the downpour. Marcus hit his brakes, his truck fishtailing, and watched as the sedan clipped the guardrail, spun like a top, and slammed into a tree with a sound that made his stomach drop. He was out of his truck before he even realized he'd stopped, running through the rain, his boots splashing through puddles. The sedan was crumpled on the driver's side, the tree embedded in the door, and Marcus could see a figure inside, hunched over the wheel. He ran to the passenger side, grabbed the handle, and pulled. Nothing. The door was jammed. He could hear someone crying, a high, panicked sound, and then he saw the kid in the back seat, trying to climb forward, his face covered in blood. "Hey!" Marcus shouted, pounding on the window. "Hey, can you hear me?" The kid's eyes found him, and Marcus saw the terror there, pure and absolute. The smell of gasoline was stronger now, and Marcus's hands were shaking as he grabbed the doorframe and pulled with everything he had. His palms screamed, the metal cutting deep, but he didn't stop, couldn't stop, because this kid was someone's son, someone's whole world, and Marcus wasn't going to let him burn. The door gave way with a shriek of metal, and Marcus reached in, grabbed the boy under the arms, and dragged him out, stumbling backward onto the road just as flames erupted from the engine. He laid the kid down on the asphalt, rain washing the blood from his face, and that's when he saw it. The shape of the nose, the line of the jaw, the eyes that looked up at him with a mixture of pain and confusion. Kyle Brennan's eyes. This was Kyle's son. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. The kid he'd just saved, the kid whose life he'd held in his hands, belonged to the man who hated him most in the world. "You're okay," Marcus heard himself say, his voice distant, like it belonged to someone else. "You're gonna be okay." The boy was shaking, his lips blue with cold or shock or both. "My dad," he whispered. "My dad's in there." Marcus's head snapped toward the car. The driver's side was crushed, flames licking up the hood, and through the smoke, he could just make out a figure slumped against the wheel. Kyle. God, it was Kyle. Marcus didn't think, just moved, running back to the wreck, the heat hitting him like a wall. He grabbed the driver's door, but it wouldn't budge. The tree had it pinned shut. He ran to the other side, climbed through the passenger door he'd torn open, and reached across to Kyle. "Kyle!" he shouted, grabbing the man's shoulder. "Kyle, wake up!" Kyle's eyes fluttered open, unfocused, and for a moment, they just stared at each other. Then recognition hit, and Kyle's face twisted. "You," he rasped. "Of course it's you." "Shut up," Marcus said, fumbling with the seatbelt. "Just shut up and let me get you out." "Leave me," Kyle said, but his voice was weak, and Marcus could see the blood pooling in his lap. "Not happening," Marcus said, and he meant it. He got the seatbelt off, hooked his arms under Kyle's, and pulled. The man screamed, a sound that cut through Marcus like a knife, but Marcus didn't stop. He dragged Kyle across the center console, through the passenger door, and out onto the road, his lungs burning from the smoke. They'd barely cleared the car when the flames found the gas tank, and the sedan exploded with a roar that made Marcus's ears ring. He collapsed next to Kyle, both of them gasping, rain pouring down on their faces. Kyle's son crawled over, his hands shaking as he grabbed his father's shirt. "Dad! Dad, are you okay?" Kyle's eyes found his son, and something in his face softened. "I'm okay, Jamie. I'm okay." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder, and Marcus pushed himself to his feet, his legs trembling. He should leave, he thought. He should get out of here before Kyle had to look at him again, before the kid realized who he was. But then Jamie looked up at him, his young face streaked with rain and blood and tears, and said, "Thank you. You saved us." Marcus opened his mouth, but no words came. Kyle was staring at him now, something unreadable in his eyes, and Marcus felt the weight of every mistake he'd ever made pressing down on his chest. "I'm sorry," he said, the words barely audible over the rain. "Kyle, I'm so sorry." Kyle didn't respond, just closed his eyes, and Marcus wondered if he'd even heard him. The ambulance pulled up then, lights flashing, and paramedics swarmed the scene. Marcus stepped back, let them work, and when a cop asked for his statement, he gave it in a voice that sounded hollow even to his own ears. He'd been driving home, saw the accident, pulled them out. That was it. That was all. But it wasn't all, and Marcus knew it. Because when he finally got back to his truck and sat there in the dark, his hands bleeding and his heart pounding, he couldn't stop seeing Jamie's face, couldn't stop hearing Kyle's voice. "Of course it's you." Like Marcus was some kind of curse, some dark cloud that followed the Brennans around, destroying everything they touched. He drove home in a daze, stumbled through his front door, and found Ethan in the kitchen, making a sandwich. The kid looked up, saw the blood on Marcus's hands, the soot on his face, and his eyes went wide. "Dad, what happened?" Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then shook his head. "Accident," he managed. "Pulled some people out of a wreck." Ethan put down his sandwich and walked over, his face suddenly serious. "Are you okay?" And Marcus looked at his son, really looked at him, and realized that Ethan had asked him that question before, dozens of times over the years, and Marcus had always brushed it off, always said he was fine, but he wasn't fine. He hadn't been fine in 7 years, maybe longer. "I don't know," he said, and his voice cracked. "I really don't know, kid." Ethan didn't say anything, just stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Marcus, and Marcus felt something break inside him, something that had been holding him together with sheer stubbornness and nothing else. He hugged his son back, tight, and let himself feel the weight of everything he'd been carrying. Danny, Kyle, the guilt that never left, and now this impossible twist of fate that had put Kyle's son in his hands. 2 days later, Marcus got a call. The voice on the other end was gruff, strained. "It's Kyle." Marcus's hand tightened on the phone. "How are you? How's Jamie?" "We're alive," Kyle said, and there was a long pause. "Thanks to you." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. "I'm glad," he finally managed. Another pause, longer this time. "Look, Kyle stopped, cleared his throat. "I don't know how to do this. I've hated you for 7 years. I blamed you for Danny, for everything. And I still do, in a lot of ways. But you saved my son. You saved me. And I don't know what to do with that." Marcus closed his eyes. "You don't have to do anything with it. Jamie wants to meet you," Kyle said. He keeps asking about the man who pulled him out. He doesn't know who you are, what happened with Danny, and I don't know if I should tell him. That's up to you, Marcus said, and he meant it. I won't blame you either way. Kyle was quiet for a long moment. Come by the house tomorrow, he finally said. 2 o'clock. We'll talk. The next day, Marcus stood on Kyle Brennan's porch, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. He'd been to this house 100 times before Danny died, for barbecues and birthday parties and Sunday football. But he hadn't been back since the funeral, and walking up those steps felt like stepping into a minefield. He raised his hand to knock, hesitated, then forced himself to do it. Kyle opened the door. He looked older than Marcus remembered, lines etched deep around his eyes, a brace on his left leg. They stared at each other for a beat, and then Kyle stepped aside. Come in. The living room was exactly how Marcus remembered it. Same couch, same photos on the walls. But there were new ones too, pictures of Jamie growing up, a kid Marcus had never met until 2 nights ago. Jamie himself was sitting on the couch, his head bandaged, a cast on his right arm. When he saw Marcus, his face lit up. You're him, Jamie said, trying to stand. You're the guy. Easy, Kyle said, moving to his son's side. Don't get up. But Jamie was already pushing himself to his feet, wincing, and then he was walking over to Marcus, his good hand extended. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. The doctor said if you hadn't gotten me out when you did, I wouldn't have made it. So thank you. Marcus shook the boy's hand, feeling the firmness of his grip, and had to swallow past the lump in his throat. You're welcome. I'm just glad you're okay. They sat down, the 3 of them, and for a moment, nobody spoke. Then Kyle cleared his throat. Marcus and I go way back, he said, not looking at Marcus. We were friends, a long time ago. Were? Jamie asked, looking between them. Kyle's jaw tightened. Something happened. Someone we both cared about died, and it complicated things. Jamie was quiet, processing that, and Marcus could see the questions forming in the kid's eyes. But before he could ask them, Kyle stood up. I need to talk to Marcus alone for a minute. You good here? Jamie nodded, though he looked confused, and Kyle gestured for Marcus to follow him outside. They stood on the porch, the afternoon sun bright and warm, a stark contrast to the rain-soaked night that had brought them back together. Kyle leaned against the railing, his back to Marcus, and when he spoke, his voice was low. I don't forgive you, he said. I want you to know that. Danny was my brother, and you were driving that night, and I can't just let that go because you pulled my kid out of a car. I know, Marcus said. I'm not asking you to. Kyle turned to face him, and Marcus saw the conflict there, the war between gratitude and grief. But I'm not going to keep hating you either, Kyle said. I can't. It's been eating me alive for 7 years, and I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so goddamn tired. And Jamie thinks you're a hero, and maybe you are. I don't know anymore. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I think about Danny every day, he said quietly. Every single day. And I know that doesn't change anything, doesn't bring him back. But I need you to know that I would give anything to trade places with him. Anything. Kyle's eyes were shiny, and he looked away, wiping at them roughly. I know you would, he said, his voice breaking. Danny knew it too. He told me once that you were the best friend he ever had, that you'd take a bullet for him. And I guess you did, in a way. You've been taking one every day since he died. They stood there in silence, the weight of 7 years hanging between them, and Marcus didn't know if this was forgiveness or just exhaustion, didn't know if it mattered. But when Kyle extended his hand, Marcus took it, and they shook, firm and sure. 2 men bound by tragedy and saved by grace they didn't deserve. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. Kyle called Marcus once to ask about Jamie's car, whether it could be salvaged. Marcus went to look at it, told him the truth, that it was totaled, but helped him deal with the insurance company. Then Jamie called, asked if Marcus could help him study for his driver's test, since his dad was still recovering and couldn't take him out to practice. Marcus said yes before he even thought about it, and the next Saturday, he found himself in the passenger seat of his truck with Jamie behind the wheel, the kid's hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. You're doing fine, Marcus said, as Jamie executed a careful turn. Just relax. I'm terrified, Jamie admitted. Every time I get behind the wheel, I see that tree coming at us. Marcus understood that. You will for a while, he said, but it gets easier. You just have to keep going. Jamie glanced at him, then back at the road. My dad talks about you sometimes. About before. Marcus's stomach tightened. Yeah? He said you were best friends with my Uncle Danny, the one who died. We were, Marcus said carefully. Jamie was quiet for a moment. He doesn't blame you anymore, he finally said. I heard him tell my mom that. He said he wasted 7 years being angry at the wrong person. Marcus didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded, and they drove in silence for a while. The afternoon sun warmed through the windshield. And Marcus thought about Danny, about how he'd never get to know Jamie, never see the man this kid would become. But he was here. Marcus was here. And maybe that meant something. 3 months later, Marcus was at Kyle's house for dinner. It had become a regular thing. Every other Sunday, just the three of them and Kyle's wife Sarah, who'd welcomed Marcus back with a warmth that made his chest ache. They ate pot roast and talked about work and Ethan's upcoming graduation, and it felt normal, easy, like slipping into an old jacket you'd forgotten you owned. After dinner, Kyle and Marcus sat on the porch with beers, watching Jamie toss a football with the neighbor's kid. He's thinking about college, Kyle said, nodding toward his son. Engineering, maybe. Kid's smart as hell. Takes after his old man, Marcus said, and Kyle snorted. Takes after his mother, Kyle corrected. Then, quieter, he wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Marcus took a sip of his beer, watching Jamie laugh at something the neighbor kid said. I was just in the right place. No, Kyle said, and there was something firm in his voice. You were the right person, and I think Danny would be glad it was you. Marcus felt his eyes sting, and he blinked hard, looking away. They sat there as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Marcus thought about second chances, about how you don't always get them, but sometimes, if you're lucky, if you're willing to carry the weight of your mistakes and keep moving forward anyway, sometimes the universe gives you something unexpected. Not forgiveness exactly, but something close, a chance to be better, a chance to save someone, even if you couldn't save the person you lost. Jamie came running up then, breathless and grinning. Marcus, you gotta come throw with us. Dad's leg is still messed up, and this guy, he jerked a thumb at the neighbor kid, throws like a toddler. Marcus laughed, set down his beer and stood up. All right, let's see what you got. As he jogged down the porch steps, he felt Kyle watching him, felt the weight of everything that had passed between them, and for the first time in 7 years, Marcus Webb felt something close to peace. Not because he deserved it, but because a kid named Jamie was alive, because Kyle had chosen grace over hate, and because sometimes, in the dark, when you pull someone from the wreckage, you save yourself too.